This is a shir on Likutei Sichos Chelek Yud Ches Shlach, the fourth sicher. Says the Rebbe on the pasuk, "Va'ato yigdal not koyach adnai." After the sin of the Meraglim, when Moshe Rabbeinu is asking for forgiveness, the pasuk, the way he davens is "Va'ato," and now yigdal not koyach adnai, the koyach of Hashem, using the word Adnai, that name of Hashem. So then the Zohar explains about this. Rabbi Acha and Rabbi Yosef said the following: Zakoi inun Yisrael meyamin evdei keicha mimu mazol is the alma. The Bnei Yisrael are meritorious from the nations, the idolatrous nations of the world. The kutshabricha isrib ibehu, because Hashem wants. This is like Ratzon. Hashem desires, wants the Yidden. The isken ibehu, and is nicknamed by the Yidden. In other words, there's two ways of reading this. The name Yisrael is Hashem. Hashem refers to himself also by the name Yisrael, or by the Yid. The Yid himself is a nickname, so to speak, a representation of Hashem. We'll see later what that means. V'isparbu, and Hashem is full of pride in the Yidden. The ha'alma le'yivra le'biginei Yisrael, because the world was created on behalf of Yisrael. Yisrael chulu inun kiyuma delay, and Yisrael, they are the sustenance, the reason for being, what keeps the world in being. The kiyuma dechal shar amim, and what gives the being and the continuation of all the other nations. Okay, so basically, the Zohar is saying that the Yidden are outstanding compared to the idolatrous nations. Hashem wants them. Hashem is called by them. Hashem is proud of them. And the whole world has its sustenance, has its existence because of the Yidden and also the other nations. So now continues the Rebbe, the reason why the Zohar brings these three virtues about Yidden, and especially these three, that Hashem's desire and choices in them, Hashem is called by them. As the Rebbe quotes from his father, Likutei Levi Yitzchak, that we see that Hashem is called by the name Yisrael, and also Hashem is full of pride, is proud with the Yidden and not with others. In other words, where does he get his pride from the Yidden in the world? But at the same time, it seems that there are higher advantages and virtues of Yidden which were not mentioned in the Zohar. For example, what it says in this week's Pirkei Avos, Nikru banim lamakim, that the Yidden are called children of Hashem, they're called sons of Hashem. So if they're children of Hashem, that seems to be much higher than just being things that Hashem identifies with, that Hashem wants. Children are actually literally a part of their part of their parent. So is there Tata Mevaya, says the Rebbe, that his father, Rav Levi Yitzchak, explains in his Ha'aris on Zohar, and his notes on Zohar, that this is consistent with what the Zohar later discusses. The Zohar says that the Yidden are Leiv Shel Kol Olam, they are the heart of the world. And as we see from the continuation of the words of the Zohar itself, we just read that the Yidden are the Kiyuma delay. They are the sustenance. They are the existence of the world is hinged on them, just like a heart. The existence of a person is dependent on his heart, and that's why, says the Rebbe's father, the Zohar spells out three virtues in the way that it does in those particular milas, because those would correspond to the three kavan, the three general movement, the three kinds of midas, and that is chesed, kindness, gevura and tiferes, beauty. And we know that midas, the place where midas reside, is in the heart. So because the Zohar is talking about the Yidden, the way they are in this world, the heart of the world, so that's why it spoke about three milas that represent the midas, the three midas, the three general midas which are in the heart. And as he spells out, the Rebbe's father spells out that Isrihi Buhu, that Hashem desires and chose the Yidden, that's Chesed. The fact that Hashem Iskeni Buhu is named by them, is called by their name, that's Gevura. How is Kinui and Gevura related? So he explains that the word Kinui, which means nickname, is the same gematria as Elikim, which is Gevura. The name Elikim denotes Gevura. And also Ispoir Buhu, that Hashem has pride in them, that's the level of Tiferes, glory and pride. So now we will understand why the additional, for example, the greater advantage of being Banim Lamakim, being children to Hashem, is not brought here in the Zohar. Because that aspect of Yisrael is an indication and points out how they are totally higher than the created world. As Chazal tell us, Machshavtam Shel Yisrael Kod Melech Al Davar, the thought of Yidden preceded everything, preceded the thought, the notion of creating a world. First there's Yisrael and Hashem's thought. Here we're talking in the Zohar about the way Yidden are in the world as the reason and the purpose of the world. As the Zohar said, the world was not created if not for Yisrael. And the existence and sustenance of the world, this is what the topic of the Zohar. That's why the Zohar speaks about the way Yidden are the Leiv, the way they're the heart of the world. And therefore, it is appropriate to speak, like Rabbi's father explained, speak about the three kav. Base. We have to, however, understand what's the connection with the content. Just in case you got this far into the Sikha and it seems a little technical, we're about to embark on, in Eis Gimel, we're about to embark on something that is so foundational in our daily lives that it's critical reading for anybody who wants to serve Hashem in our world. So base, we have to understand. First of all, what's the connection between the content of this mimer about the three virtues and advantages of the Yidden to the pasuk about which the Zohar is talking about? What's the pasuk? Now Hashem, you should make greater your name of Adonai. How does that got to do with the fact that the Yidden are special in this world? 2. Before the Zohar speaks about the three advantages of Yidden, he says just a general statement. Zakoyin in Yisrael me'aminakum, that the Jewish people are more meritorious than the idolatrous nations. Because Hashem desires them. From this expression of language, it would seem to be that the Zohar is saying something that's news. It's a piece of news, a chidush. Well, this is wondrous. We have to be amazed at this. How can such a simple statement of fact, which is so clear to us, how could you think otherwise? Obviously, the Yidden are more meritorious than the idolatrous nations. What's the question? What's the chiddush here? And in general, it's difficult to understand. What does it mean that Yidden are more meritorious than the idolatrous nation? Is that the way you talk about the greatness of Yisrael? By comparing them and holding them up against idolatrous nation? Yidden are a totally different sug. They're a totally different type. Yidden are of a totally elevated and separate, distinct, totally different than non-Jews. So how do you identify the advantage of Yisrael by comparing them to idolatrous nations in the world? Seemingly, we have to understand. Gimel. So we'll understand this by first prefacing the explanation in general in the pasuk. And now you shall make bigger your name, your koyach, your power, represented in the name Adonai. So what does that mean? What was Moshe Rabbeinu doing with this tefillah? So simply speaking, Moshe Rabbeinu in this tefillah wanted to achieve the forgiveness for the sin of the Meraglim, and he was asking Hashem to forgive. As the Medrash explains these words, Yigdal no koyach Adonai, let the power of Adonai become greater and more strengthened, and let the attribute of Rachamim overpower the Midas Adin, the attribute of judgment, because strictly judgmentally, the Jews were deserving of punishment for such a grave crime. So was saying that the Koyach Adonai, make that bigger, make the power of Adonai bigger to be able to overcome the judgmentalism and be able to treat them with mercy. So it's not understood. First of all, since Moshe wanted to arouse the midah of rachamim and mercy, why didn't he put the name of Yud Kei Vav Kei, which is identified totally with rachamim, with mercy, compassion? Why did he speak about koyach Adonai, which, simply speaking, the word Adonai is adnus. Is adnus means to be a master, a odin. And being a master would seem to be connected with midas adin, an exacting approach to those that you are a master of. Question number 2, if this is such a powerful prayer that Moshe Rabbeinu employs here when the grave sin of the Meraglim, why is this the only time it shows up? When Moshe Rabbeinu davened for the Yidden when they did the sin of the Egel also, and other sins. We don't find this particular tefillah. It seems like this tefillah, Yigdal Nokeach Adonai, is somehow measured and tailor-made to suit this kind of sin. So the explanation is, the fact that the Meraglim, the spies, didn't want that the Yidden should go into Eretz Yisrael, it wasn't because they denied God or they denied the ability for Hashem to do miracles. I mean, these guys just came through the most miraculous time period in history. They had a year of unbelievable miracles, from Exodus, from the splitting of the sea, the manna. But what was lacking in them is the feeling that the Eibishter is Adonai as master. That he's Odein Lechol B'ri Yosecha. Why is the name Adonai the one we use about Hashem? Because what it means is that Hashem is a master on all his creations. Now, by their sin was that wasn't in their consciousness. This wasn't uppermost in their mind, that Hashem is the Baal Habayit. He's in charge, he's the master of everything in the world. And now, in order to fix that omission, Moshe Rabbeinu is saying, let us build up, Yigdal, let us build up the koyach, the fact that Adonai, that the master of the universe, has koyach, he's in full control. We have to build that up and make that something that should be uppermost in the awareness of the Yidden. So let's develop this further. Dalet. On the pasuk which says that the Meraglim came back and says, Chazaku mimenu, he is more strong than us. Now, simply speaking, it seems to see that he's talking about the nations that they saw, strong nations, but then it should say they are stronger. Right? They are stronger. But really, it says, it doesn't say Chazaku me'itanu. Chazaku, it should say that he is stronger than us. It says Mimenu, he is stronger than him. So Chazal say that this actually is alluding to something. That the Meraglim were, so to speak, saying they're stronger. This situation is overwhelming for him, so to speak, for Hashem. It's almost as if to say, they were saying that the Baal Habayit, the one in charge, can't even get his tools out of the place that he is in charge of. I mean, in the world, that sometimes happens. Sometimes something that you're in charge of, you don't have full power over. You don't have full control of all the details. That's what they were saying about Hashem. So what does that mean? So the Rebbe says, we've already explained. What does that mean is they weren't denying Hashem. That sounds to me like it's mamish a denial of Hashem. They were not denying Hashem. The Meraglim's claim was that when you talk about Hashem, the way he expresses and deals with the world in a miraculous way, no problem. He can do everything. And we see that that's the way Hashem works in the desert, where the Jews are cut off from the world and they're freed and relieved of any duties of being involved in the things usually you need to be involved in this world. You don't have to worry about their parnasa, don't have to worry about anything. Hashem takes care of everything in the desert. So there's a total disconnect from the ways of nature. Hashem is omnipotent. Hashem is not limited. Hashem can take care of everything, and he does. But now let's see. Hashem now has told them he wants them to go. In the Torah he says, I want you to go into a settled land, and I want you, when you come to the land, Sheish Shonim Tizah, 6 years, you should plant, and so on. I want you to make it happen in a natural way. And according to the Torah, you're not allowed to rely on a miracle. You have to work in the ways of nature. So then, say the Meraglim, in that kind of mode, you can't have a concurrent, opposite than nature existence. So you want us, Hashem, to put on the glasses and to put on the vestments and the garments of nature. So since, according to nature, when we go in and we spy out to see where you're taking us and how we're meant to live, the current inhabitants of the land are stronger. And you don't want us, Hashem. You've taught us an axiom. Don't rely on a miracle. We have to stay in the desert. And what that means is that, what do we just say? Is as if you're saying the owner can't take out his tools from there. Surely the Meraglim understood Hashem can do whatever he wants. That wasn't a question. And more than that, even they understood that even nature is something that is a godly creation. As they say, it's K-love. It's like somebody who can't take his tools out of it. It's his tools, obviously. He created even that natural state of being. However, they said, since the Balabai, since Hashem himself made the house in this way, that it works in a natural operating order, he wants that we should work in Eretz Yisrael in a natural way. So Kivayach, it's as if to say he can't take out his tools from there. In other words, he himself has limited himself, a self-imposed limitation, but he's created, so to speak, a self-imposed limitation where he can't operate in a miraculous way once he's put himself into a system that he designed to be natural, which seems to be a very strong, thought-out piece of logic. I mean, if by design you, Hashem, created the game in this way, so, wow, we don't see how this can work. But the truth is different. The emes, as Rebbe says, the emes is aber. The truth is that even though Hashem made the world and designed the world to be a natural world, it's God forbid to say that Hashem can't or is limited to the behavior, to the pattern, to the design which He's injected into the world. Hashem is kol yochel. He's able to do everything. And therefore there is always the ability to change nature. And more than that, because Yidden are Chelek Elokam Mal Mamish, Yidden are a portion of God. And Chelek Havai Amei, Hashem's nation is a portion of Him. They're not limited to the ways of nature. They have the ability, the potential, when it's necessary, to be able to position themselves higher than the limitations of nature. So Hashem wants us to be in the world, but to do what He wants. And when need be, He'll override the system. And not just that, but we're part of the overriding the system because we're Hashem's people. It's almost like we have a pass we can pull out in times of great need. And that's what Moshe Rabbeinu said. Was davening by Hashem. The power of Adonai should be strengthened, should be greatened. The name of Adonai, the name Adnus, is being a master. That's the source of the natural mode of being. As the Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya, that from this midah of Oda in Adonai, that's where the creation of the world is taken from. And the world is created in a way which seems to be a yesh gom, or something separate and an independent entity from Hashem. At the same time, that very name that gives birth to those creatures that seem to feel separate, that name represents that Hashem is the master of all those created beings. And He can change and develop things the way He wants. When the Meraglim said, the Spy says that Balabais can't even take out his tools from there, they had tampered and violated the greatness of the name of Adonai. The fact that Hashem is the supreme master over the entire universe and all its details. And that's why Moshe Rabbeinu asked, now let's rectify this. That let us make bigger the name Adonai. It should be made bigger and should be revealed. And to make something bigger, you have to replenish something. You have to draw down from its source, from even higher. So Yigdal Hashem is davening to a higher level, so to speak, of the Eibush. Please, let's replenish and let's unblemish what they've blemished in their recognition of the adnus, of the masterness of Hashem. And let it be reaffirmed and reestablished that Hashem is the complete balabais also over nature. Hey, now, the fact that the Meraglim were lacking in this understanding, in this recognition, that you, Hashem, are the master of all your created beings, the fact that the Eibishter's ownership and directorship on world is not at all limited with those limitations that he has for the most part established in the world. Why did they have that lack of understanding? It's connected with the fact that they also didn't have the full recognition about the advantage and the virtue of Yidden the way they are in this world. In other words, that even in this world, they're not bound by the laws of nature. According to their understanding that there's a higher than nature, and then the world, anything that comes into the world, even Hashem's power in the world, is bound by this overarching stipulation of Hashem that everything has to be natural. According to that premise, the Maila of Yidden would only be in their connection to Hashem in a way that they're higher than the world. Dafka when a Yid, and even in this world, when a Yid is doing something that's otherworldly, that's for example when he's in the Beis Medrash or the Beis Knesses, he's davening or learning, he's doing holy things, otherworldly things, that would be where you would see the Maila of the Yidden. However, once a Yid is doing things that are part of Hashem's natural state of being, in other natural order of being in this world, where you don't see the outward connection that they have with Hashem's desire, with Hashem's, it just seems to be just like what a non-Jew does, same thing. Then, according to the premise of the Meraglim, there's no difference there between the Yidden and other nations. And that's why, because they didn't get it, that the Bnei Yisrael's advantage and virtue is even the way they are here in this world, seemingly equal to other nations. That's why they also didn't get it, that Hashem, even when he has his world that's been established in a way of nature, that this too is imbued, this too is enlivened and still directed by Hashem who's higher than nature. In other words, in their world, in their eyes, there was a disconnect. And yes, there's aspects that remain otherworldly, higher than world. In the areas where Hashem chooses to descend into the world, he makes it in a way where he, so to speak, removes himself from continued involvement. That's not the case. But because that was the way they saw also the status of the Yidden in Inyanim of nature. That's why the Zohar speaks about the advantage of Yidden the way they are here in this world. How does the expression of the Hagdolah, the making greater of Koyach Adnai, the way Hashem is a master in the world, in creation, in the limited world that he's established, in what does it express itself by Yidden? In comparison to the regular world, which is idolatrous nations of the world. Even when Yidden are in this concealment of world, and in an outward way, you don't see any advantage, you don't see any difference between them and idolatrous nations. So much so that you could say that there could be somebody who could think there's no difference between them, especially when they're not doing holy things. So that's what the Zohar comes and says. The truth is that also there the Yisrael are meritorious and different than the idolatrous nations. Even the way they are in this world, even the way we wouldn't see the outward difference, there is a deep difference. And that's why the Zohar brings three milas. Hashem's Isribu, Hashem has desire in them. Iskinim, Hashem calls his name by them. Isboibu, Hashem takes pride in them. This we also find, these are things which we find parallels in creation in general, where you would think the Bnei Yisrael are just part of the general creation, Jew and non-Jew alike. You say, no, even in those aspects which are very primal to creation, there also we see that Dafka by Yidden there's an advantage. They are also Oizgitel, they are separate than the entire creation. The Rabbi in Orah 10 had pointed out, in Orah 27 it points out, you see, what was Moshe Rabbeinu trying to do? We have to understand. Moshe Rabbeinu was trying to get slicha, was trying to get forgiveness for the Yidden. Now, the way Hashem is higher than Ishtalshlos, that's where slicha, that's where forgiveness emanates. Because even though here, in a particular sphere, they violated their relationship with God, but on a higher level, higher than Ishtalshlos, where the Yidden are just one with God, they're in the machshav of Hashem, there nothing can separate between them. So there Hashem can forgive because the love is innate there. The love is just not penetrable, not violable. Can't be violated. But as Rebbe points out here in 27, this needs to come down into the world because Moshe Rabbeinu is trying to bring slicha, trying to get forgiveness for the Yidden the way they are here in this world. Right. So that's why the Zohar is talking about the Yidden the way they are here in this world, and that's why these three aspects are going to be speaking about the Yidden the way they are in this world, and it's here where Moshe Rabbeinu draws down the forgiveness for them. So let's jump into it. Vav. Chazal tell us everything Hashem created in His world, He didn't create anything in vain. Leibara dava echad levatola. This was understood. I just want to say here that an analogy that the Rabbi uses in various places in Sichos, that even a balabosta, a good owner of a house, she doesn't have clutter. Hashem doesn't have anything He doesn't need. This is a very powerful statement of self-esteem that everybody should always have in their back pocket, because today the world suffers from lack of self-esteem. If Hashem didn't want you, you wouldn't be here. If you're here, He needs you. So, but that's true about everything in creation. That's just a standard meditation. Hashem doesn't create anything in vain. From this we understand. So everything has a kavanah and a ratzon Hashem. Nonetheless, everything Hashem desires. No. When we talk about Yisrael, ratzon is somehow connected dafka to Yisrael. What do you mean? We just said Hashem, if He doesn't want something, He doesn't have it. No. The reason for this is, since the Yidden are the ultimate purpose for the world, right? We know the world is created for the Yidden to create a dwelling place for Hashem. Everything else around the world is all for Yisrael, to create a dwelling place for Hashem. So the fact that Hashem wants all the creation and everything else in it, that's not really the end desire. He wants a world. Why do you want a world? Because I want to have my Yisrael, my people of Israel, in that world, creating a space for me. Oh, so all the other aspects of the world are secondary and only an ability to get to the main Ratzon, His main intention, which just is Yisrael. So it turns out that there's no existential and essential desire or want for everything else in the world. They are serving a secondary function. You ask somebody, you want money? Yeah, I want money. What do you mean? Well, you like money? You like the smell? What do you like? No, I want to be able to provide for my family. Oh, okay. So you want money. Your real desire is to provide for your family. So the secondary desire here is, Hashem wants a world, and He has all the details of the world. But why? Why do you want a world? Because I want Yisrael to create, to serve me in this world. So that's what it is by Yidden Dafke Isribu. The Ratzon is in Yidden. And that is a tenuah of chesed. When you want something that's lower than you, Hashem wants the Bnei Yisrael, that's chesed. Zayin. The reason for Iskanibu, Hashem is called by the Jewish people. In other words, that Yidden are a nickname for Hashem. So what does a nickname mean? When you call something by a name, it's revelatory. It reveals, right? When you give a nickname, let's say a very common nickname in Hebrew. I'm actually not sure what the original name is. Shuki. What name is that? To be honest, I don't remember. But because you don't even hear the name in the nickname. It could be sometimes nickname is not even a shortening of the name, right? You hear a nickname, Yossi, you know it's Yosef, and it's translated to Yossi. But like a name like Shuki, it's a nickname. And it's sometimes not even in the same language. On the other hand, the fact that a person has this nickname, so it is somehow related to the name, right? Similarly with Yidden and the Eibishter, since Yidden are called Chelek Elokam Mamish, they're part of Hashem. You can. This is expressed in the Yid, but there's two ways expressed in the Yid. There's the way it's expressed in a revealed way. When the Yid is busy doing things that express his portion of God within him, he's doing Torah, he's serving Hashem. So then it's obvious to everybody that this is a Yid. This is somebody who's representative of Hashem. This is a Yid who has a piece of God inside of him. As the pasuk says, when the Yid puts on tefillin, the nations of the world will see that the name of Hashem is on you. The Gemara says that this especially when through that the Yid puts on tefillin. Literally, the name of Hashem in the tefillin is on his head. But it also means conceptually, when a Yid lives in a way of Torah mitzvahs, it's obvious to everybody that he's a walking piece of Hashem, so to speak. However, when a Jew is just doing things that everybody else is doing, is in the street just doing regular materialistic things, so then very often you can't see anything holy about him, you can't see anything godly about him. An outsider, a non-Jew, looks at him, doesn't notice that this is something different. Sometimes even another Yid wouldn't notice that this is a fellow Jew. In that status, in that state, the Yid is a nickname to Hashem. That, in other words, to Hashem, his godly portion in him, the way he looks outside, he's just like a nickname. You don't see the intrinsic connection. And that's actually an aspect of Gvura, right? We said, Rabbi Yitzchak explained that Chesed and Gvura, this kinui, this, besides having the gematria of Elikim, which is Gvura, but this concept of being hidden is a Gvura-dika concept. Where does hiddenness come from? Concealment comes from Gvura. They wish to conceal things. That's an act of self-constraint and Gvura, limiting. So even there, and what's the Zohar telling us? That even in a place where he doesn't seem to be indicative, the Jew's behavior is in a way that doesn't seem to be indicative of his godly inside, even there, he's also a kinui. He's also a nickname. He represents God, except that it's not clearly obvious. You have to be a maven. A maven means you have to be a connoisseur. You have to be able to understand. And here the Rebbe inserts, it's not always so usual for Likutei Sichos, right? But inserts a beautiful story that once the Rebbe Rashab was praising very strongly certain simple Yidden about their greatness, about the great virtue of the simplicity and the genuine connection they have to Hashem. And he was saying about them they have great milas, great advantages. So there was a great, illustrious and rich chassid there, a Monya's son. And he told the Rebbe he was, I guess, he was truly a person of stature and of learning. He wasn't a simple Jew but the Rebbe was building up the case for the specialty of the simple Jews. And the Manya said, Ich seh it, I don't see it. No, the Monya's son, he was a diamond merchant. And he had with him, he had brought with him to Lubavitch. He was meeting with the Rebbe Rashab. He had brought with him a package of diamonds. He was a big diamond merchant. So later on, the Rebbe Rashab asked him if he could see his diamonds. So he showed him the diamonds, and while he was showing the diamonds, he pointed out to one of the diamonds. He says, "Ooh, this diamond is Pile Ploim. It's extra wondrous, special diamond." The Rebbe told him, "Ich seh nicht. I don't see it." So the Manya said, "Oh, midav zayin ameivin. You have to be a connoisseur. You have to be able to understand the diamond." The Rebbe Rashab said, "A yid is Pile Ploim. A yid is wondrous. You have to be a maven. You have to be a connoisseur." Understand? So Mela, if you don't see in another Yid that he's representative of Hashem, that he, in his essence he represents the Chelek Elakah, the portion of Hashem, sometimes you're right, says the Rebbe. It's a kinui. It's like a nickname where you don't see the obvious connection between the nickname and the name. But if you're a maven, if you're discerning, you see it. And by every Yid, there's this specialty that there's the expression of his godly soul is there. Sometimes you have to be a maven to see it. Now, this is ches. This is the what the Zohar is saying. This is the chiddush. That the Yidden are advantageous and meritorious compared to the nations of the world, even where they don't seem to be so, even where they're only like a nickname for Hashem, where you don't see the connection to their godly soul. This advantage of Shem Hashem Nikra Alecha, where it's not seen in a revealed way. You see, the way it is that Hashem's name is seen obviously upon them, that's okay, that's clearly only Shaykh by Yisrael. But where they're engaged and they look to be just like anyone else, like any other nation, the fact that they're special even there. So actually, this is also by other things. You wouldn't think that there's that in this place where they seem to be just plain, there's also some advantage to Yisrael over other things. Here the Rebbe explains, really in everything there is the Dvar Hashem, the word of Hashem that enlivens him. And if you're a maven, you can see that in every creation, not just by Yidden. How much more so we know that the story of the Maggid of Mezrich, he was able to see in a work of art or in a tool, in a table, he's able to see who made it. He's able to see the vested power of creation, of activity that the person had vested into putting together or creating or building or fashioning that item. And that's why he was able to see in a certain piece of furniture that, or a certain utensil, that the craftsman who created it was blind in one eye. Because if you're a maven, if you're truly able to see to the depth of things, you're able to see within everything the deeper aspect of it. So you could see in every aspect of creation the fact that it's Hashem who creates it. So you can see the godliness in everything. What's special here about Yisrael, that they're, even when they're in a state where you don't see their obvious connection to Hashem, they're still representing Hashem. Everything is like that. No. Nonetheless, Dafka the Zera says, Iskini, this nickname, in other words, this connection to Hashem, even when it's not obvious, is Dafka B'hu, is Dafka B'Yidin. Why? Because on the general creation, although it's of course all created by Hashem, and Hashem's input is visible to a maven, but you can't say that this is Hashem being called by this thing. And a nickname is, you're called Shuki, that Yaakov or whatever, Shuki, Yisrael or whatever name Shuki. And now I'm curious myself to remember what Shuki is. But whatever name that that represents, it's calling the person. That person is called by that name. However, when we talk about other items of creation, actually, the mere fact that you can see that Hashem created that being is you see that being is a separate entity, which Hashem, the Rabbi says, b'derech pu'ula, in a way of creation, in a way of activity, in a way of action, is creating something, so to speak, separate of Him. By Yidden, it's not like that. The Yidden are a portion of Hashem. They're not something that's created by Hashem. We already say that in the deepest level, they're Chelek alekad. The neshama is a portion of Hashem, mimal, from above, mamish. It's mamish, a portion of Hashem. And therefore, even when they're down below in a place of concealment, they retain their oneness with Hashem. And that's why, even when you don't see it, but it's Hashem that's there. Therefore, even where you can't see the connection between the Yid and his Chelek Elokah, he's a kino, he's only like a nickname, which doesn't see a connection, but this is Elikus, this is Chelek Elokah Mimam. Not like all the other items of creation, which are created by Hashem. You can see Hashem's input in those things, so to speak, but they're created to be separateness. The Yid, even while he's down here below, where he seems to be a kino, only a nickname, it's a nickname for Hashem, so to speak. His Chelek Elokah, his portion of Hashem, is expressed by him, even though you have to be a maven. You don't obviously see it. Tess, the reason why Vesparbahu Hashem has pride in the Yidden, that Hashem is proud of the Yidden, is because the fact that the Shechina resides down below by a Yid, so this has an advantage, so to speak, even the way Hashem is Lamaila, Hashem is above in the higher worlds. And that's why we say, Ikar Shechina b'tachtenim, he said the main aspect of Shechina was in the lower worlds. This is where Hashem's true interest lies, so to speak. The Ikar and Etzem, the essence of the Shechina is here. The game plan is down below here. And that's why Hashem is a spoilerbu. Hashem is proud of the Yidden down below, because they do carry out His work down below. And this creates, when you're proud of something, it adds to you. This creates a godless in the Shechina. This creates, so to speak, an ascent and an addition, a making greater of Hashem Shechina. Well, you also, though, this is not the only place that this is to be seen. You also have an expression of this in other aspects of creation. Because, hey, don't we say that all aspects of creation are part of the Tachtenim, a part of the lower worlds, that are all supposed to express the greatness of Hashem? So that's why Chazal tell us, everything Hashem created in His world, He created only for His kavod. So everything really has that aspect. It brings out the kingship of Hashem. As the pasuk, as we say, Hashem yimlech leilavad, Hashem reigns forever. So that's the whole world, not dafka by Yidden. So what's special by Yidden? Nonetheless, says the Zohar, no, it's in Yisrael that Hashem is proud. You can't compare this to what it says, Yisrael Hashem b'cho espor, the pasuk that says that Yisrael, I'm prideful in you. I get my pride from you. As the Chazal tells us, Hashem says, I'm going to make you chativa achas. You're going to be a unique block, a unique portion in this world. There's nothing else like you. But the whole world is for the kavod of Hashem. No. The Yidden have a specialty. Why? Because, as we said before, the Yidden are the purpose of the whole world. So here the Rebbe gives us a mashal like a king that builds a palace for his daughter and his son-in-law. So it seems to be a very simple thing that the palace, when the king builds a palace, does he build a palace? The palace adds in the covet of the king. Only a great king can build such a beautiful and unbelievable dira. But what's the palace in comparison? Even the beautiful furniture and the items in the palace, decorations, how can this be compared to the specialty of the daughter and the son-in-law of the king? The whole house is created for them. That just points out how great they are. They are the purpose. Similarly here, says the Rebbe. When we say Kol Mashkodesh Baruch Hashem creates everything in the world only for his covet, for his honor. Yeah, but for who is it all? Who's the one who's supposed to bring out this covet of Hashem, the greatness of Hashem in the world? It's the Yidden. This is all in order for the Yidden to be able to fulfill the wish of Hashem here in this world. And that's where Hashem has his true pride and glory. Amcha Yisrael and Goy Echad Ba'aretz. If I may just some people make a mistake. They make their kids meshuga if if somehow they don't keep the house spick and span and in perfect condition. Hello, the house is for the children. The children are your main thing. Your family is the main thing. The house is to be used by them. Don't get confused. The world is for the covet of Hashem, but it's for us to bring out the covet of Hashem in the world. So can you imagine how much Hashem is proud of us and wants us and is desirous of us? Right? Amcha Yisrael Goy Echad Ba'aretz. We are the Goy Echad Ba'aretz, the one nation of the world. And as elsewhere the Rebbe explains, our mission is to bring down the Echad, the oneness of Hashem, into the earth. So let's take on the mission.